Today I'm going to talk about integrating sources into your speech. There are three main points that I would like to discuss. First, I'd like to identify the types of source material that you may need to orally reference in your speech. Second, I'd like to identify why it's important to orally cite your source material. And third, I'm going to discuss ways in which you can orally integrate your source material into your speech. First, let's identify some of the types of source material that you may need to orally reference. Depending on your topic, you will use a variation in source material that may include books, periodicals, government documents, newspapers, interviews, or movies. This is just to name a few. The sources that you select should be relevant to your topic and applicable to your audience. While researching your topic and finding supporting material is very important to the development of your speech, it's really only half of your responsibility. You need to give credit to your sources orally within your speech. There are two reasons I want to talk about. First of all, you don't want to give the impression to your audience that the material that you're giving them is your own material if you are in fact using someone else's ideas, statistics, or research findings. You have a responsibility not only to your audience but also to your source. Secondly, by orally giving credit to your sources and introducing that source specifically to your audience, you will add credibility to your speech and build trust with your audience. You will also give your audience the material that they need to assess the validity of the information you are providing to them and the credibility of that information. Integrating citations into your speech isn't as simple as citing the full citation. That would be awkward and disruptive. I'd like to give you some ideas on how you could fluently integrate relevant parts of the source material for your audience. Now, if I were giving a speech and I was using material from a study completed by a Dr. John Foley, I would most definitely want to introduce my source and my author to my audience. One way that I could do that is as follows. I could state, in a study completed by Dr. John Foley, Director of the Institute on the Environment, environmental scientist and professor at the University of Minnesota. This has given my audience the author of the study that I'm referencing and a little bit of a bio on him. I've also let them know that he's a professor at the University of Minnesota. I know that my audience would recognize the University of Minnesota, and I always like to bring my research as close to home to my audience, to someone that they would recognize. And so I think it's key, if your audience recognizes a source, make sure you connect them with that. Now, in addition to that, I might want to take it a little step further. I might want my audience to know when the study was completed. So I could say, in a study completed last fall by Dr. John Foley, Director of the Institute on the Environment, environmental scientist, and professor at the University of Minnesota. This is very fluent and just a short introduction to my source material. Now I might want to take that one step further if where this is published is recognizable to my audience. I might just want to include where it was published so that my audience knows where they could go and take a look at it. So I might say, in a study completed last fall by Dr. John Foley, Director of the Institute on the Environment, environmental scientist and professor at the University of Minnesota, and published in the National Geographic. Now I've given my audience enough information that if they were taking notes, they could actually go and look up this study if they so desired. By integrating my source material into my speech orally, I not only fulfill my responsibility to my audience and to my sources, but I build credibility in the meantime, at the same time. Thank you.